Welcome, my friends and travelers. Redarkwell here with another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at this video, the somewhat complete lore of Silksong by mossbag. So yeah, I just completed Silksong the other day, last Friday. Um, it was the first game I really streamed on the channel, so kind of a big accomplishment, and I was happy to get through it. It was a difficult game, and so it took me a while, but I had a lot of fun. Um, and Yeah, I think it's a worthy sequel to the first game, which I love. Um, Now, I think comparing the two, there are things I like better about the first one, and things I like better about Silksong. I think Silksong gameplay wise is just generally a big step up. It just feels better to play, like just how Hornet moves and everything like that. Um, but one area where I still think right now I prefer the first game is in terms of the story, the lore of the first game, just uncovering the secrets of Hollow Nest, piecing together um, like the Knight's Destiny and everything like that. I think it's just a really cool story. And Farloom, the story didn't quite grab me quite as much there. Like Hornet, she's an outsider, and I just I don't know. But I will acknowledge that maybe not all of the lore quite clicked in place with me just yet, which is why I need to watch this. I mean, I also just want to watch this because it's probably gonna be a good video. Like I love the Mossbag video for the first game. Watch that or watch reactions to that like all the time. Just a very fun video. Mossbag has a great sense of humor, and I think he did about as good a breakdown of the lore as anyone could for the first game. So I'm eager to hopefully see him do the same here for Silksong. And yeah, that said, let's just go ahead and get into this. Here we go. The somewhat, this time, not mostly, the somewhat complete lore of Silksong. All right.
Oi!
Ever
Mossbag.
since its release back in September of 2025, people have been debating what the plot of Hollow Knight Silksong even was. Back in September of 2025, people have been debating what the plot of Hollow Knight Silksong even was. Why were all those bugs obsessed with their pilgrimage to the Citadel? Who were those mysterious figures who seemed to be running the place? And just who exactly is this character? Why is everyone saying her name is Hornet and calling her a spider and a worm when she doesn't look like any of those things?
Wow, yeah.
This video
You gotta
intends
play
to
the first
answer a
game.
good 70% of these questions. We will ascend through the land of Farloom, dissecting the game's dialogue and world in an attempt to wrangle a more complete understanding of Team Cherry's Metroidvania masterpiece. But with how recent this game is, please keep in mind that the theories shared here might be lacking a sort of refinement you would expect from deep dive lore videos about other, less recent video game releases.
Yeah.
Also, please don't take everything I say in this video as gospel. I am just one of many people with theories, and nothing makes my words more inherently correct.
Kind of
So don't
explaining
just
why it's
automatically
somewhat
believe me
instead
when
of
I say
mostly this
stuff
time.
like when the slab was built, or that the earth is round, or that now is actually a really good time to be investing in Ethereum. Oh, and this video will contain massive spoilers, not only for Hollow Knight Silksong, but also Hollow Knight. In fact, you kind of need to know a lot about Hollow Knight's story to really appreciate the story in Silksong.
That is true.
So if you need to refresh
things towards the
on
end,
Hollow Knight's
especially,
lore,
would just not make
be sure
sense
to
to you
check
if you
out my
didn't play the
Hollow
first
Knight
game.
lore video first. This video also contains massive spoilers for the hit 2004 film Shrek the Third.
I
So
see.
if you need a refresher on Shrek the
don't
Third's
think it
lore,
actually does,
be sure to
but
check out my Shrek the Third lore video first. This is the somewhat complete lore of Silksong. The story of Silksong begins with Silk,
another Silk.
more specifically Grandmother Silk, a higher being described as the primal source of all silk. Silk in the world of Silksong is spun from the soul of its creator, and has the power to heal wounds, extend life, and weave powerful runes. Grandmother Silk is also described as a pale being. What exactly are pale beings? Some might have you believe they are great beings, worthy of praise above all others. But Hornet wouldn't necessarily agree with that assessment. While pale beings are immensely powerful, they don't always have the best intentions at heart. Pale beings are usually mainly interested in total subjugation from the bugs living beneath them. Hornet, a bug who is half pale being from her father, the Pale King, explains, "Devotion or destruction. These are the only fates my kind allow." And Hornet doesn't hold the pale beings in her life in particularly high regard. She calls her father, the Pale King, a fool in the Wings Mold Hunter's journal entry, and she
I never got
admonishes
around
his
to reading
wife,
all the
the
journal
White
entries,
Lady,
so I
inside
should
the
have
Red
done that.
Memory. So yeah, Hornet complains about pale beings
That's
in her
pretty cool.
diary and also gets into arguments with them in her head, which sounds pathetic, but she really does have a point. But this desire for control among pale beings was no different for Grandmother Silk. We don't know exactly when or how, but at some point in the past, she appeared in the land of Farloom. And while we don't know the exact timeline, we do know her arrival led to the decline of other nearby civilizations. One such civilization was an order of blade bugs and hunters, ruled by Crust King Khan. At the height of their rule, Khan's order occupied half of the lands of
His
Farloom.
damn tower.
It seems Khan and his warriors were one of the last groups left to stand against Grandmother Silk's influence. But by the time Hornet arrives in Farloom,
Did not like
Khan's
that tower.
kingdom has been all but forgotten, and his lands eroded by sand. Another group taking up residence in the land of Farloom was the Scar, a tribe of ants united in service under the powerful warrior Queen Scarsinger Carmelita. While Hornet can still find members of the Scar tribe during her time in Farloom, they seem lost without a true nest, and uncertain if the song they hear is still Carmelita's. Carmelita herself can still be found, but
there's got to be all
form
sorts
has
of
withered.
interesting
Her power faded by time.
song dialogue.
Judging by her withered body, she appears to be about 28 or even 29 years old. Another force in Farloom is Nihilith, a plant-like being responsible for sowing the first seed, which would eventually grow into the region of Farloom known as Shellwood. While Nihilith is gone by the time Hornet arrives in Farloom, Shellwood is still filled with life, not fully snuffed out by Grandmother Silk's influence. On the eastern border of Farloom was the land of Verdania, home to twin princes. In a bid to avoid destruction by Grandmother Silk's kingdom, one of the princes gave his life as tribute. But these actions proved futile, as Verdania fell to ruin anyway, leaving the land as nothing but barren caverns by the time Hornet finds them. In addition to these different groups within Farloom, there was also a town far above on the surface. When Hornet visits this town in-game, however, it is completely abandoned. Playing her needle in near one of the few remaining corpses reveals the following dialogue. Friends seduced. Sweet promises whispered. The weaving ones beckon. It seems the residents of this town were drawn down into Farloom by the actions of the weavers. Grandmother Silk's spider children. Much like their mother, these spiders could produce powerful silk from within their shells, and they even devised various tools and charms as well. Hornet herself is the child of one of these weavers, Hera the Beast. As for why Hera looks so different from the rest of the weavers,
that is a good point.
Never really explains. She's just a weaver
really
that
doesn't look like any
like
of them.
a weaver. Similar to how there are humans who just don't look like humans.
Either
way, all this means that Farloom was actually Hornet's ancestral home, tying her to the land much more deeply than she initially realizes. But what exactly were the weavers doing in Farloom in this time long before the birth of Hornet? And what were these sweet promises they whispered to the bugs of the land? The answer to that question would be the Citadel of Song, an eternal city that has long been drawing in pilgrims from the lands below, compelling them to follow the holy path through the lands of Farloom in hopes of basking and singing in its shining light. Pilby, the little pilgrim, explains, "Our holy land calls on us. To journey up is our greatest task. Who are we to refuse? Guided by faith, we climb through flaming fields, across rolling moors, and up great gilded steps, all to reach that eternal, shining citadel." Even when Hornet arrives in Farloom, the call of the Citadel still pulls in pilgrims. As the chapel maid explains, even now, in Farloom's long decline, the simple bugs, they're witless before it. Too grand, too majestic, too powerful. One possible example of how the weavers pulled in pilgrims was through the creation of these bells, located in bell shrines all throughout Farloom.
They are all over the place.
When Hornet rings one in Songclave, the caretaker admonishes her, saying, "That bell is rung out far and wide. The wretched and the lost will have heard its call. They'll be making their way here now." This exact same bell design can be found near a workbench in Weavenest Atla, indicating that these bells were designed by the weavers, possibly as a tool to help draw pilgrims to the holy path to the Citadel. Bugs arriving at the Citadel of Song were tasked to join the holy song. Deep within the Whispering Vaults, Hornet can find Pious Isamor, a giant statue of a pilgrim. While some of Isamor's dialogue is fractured,
I don't think I've resolved
it seems
this.
to be telling pilgrims arriving at the Citadel that their true service can now commence. That service being to raise their voices in song. Pilgrims arriving at the Citadel could become
100% the
members
game,
of the
so
choir.
I just answer
Devoted
these little
members
lore
could
things I
even
missed.
rise to the ranks of chorister, reed, and grand reed. They all joined in to see the Citadel's holy song sustained.
Gotta
But
love
hidden
the
beneath
reed.
the beauty of the Citadel is a cruel system of subjugation designed to trap bugs into a life of endless toil.
Hmm.
As Hornet explains, these poor bugs, all are victim of the Citadel and its insidious attraction. This place draws them up into its maw, only to consume them utterly. A good example of this can be found in the Underworks. Bugs are forced to work down there in inhumane
Yeah, that place
conditions,
was kinda-
being forced to spend what little
have to pay
rosaries
for the
they have
benches.
every single time they want to rest at a bench. There's a rosary-operated confessional for bugs to use, but the message it gives is automated and tells the bugs that their sin must be cleansed by working harder.
Hmm.
We can see this
I don't think I saw
mindset
that either. I don't remember
internalized by
that.
Loam, a bug endlessly running on a treadmill, believing that the Citadel will eventually reward him for his hard work.
I also do
cannot
not remember
rest.
this guy.
Us works and Citadel breeds, and them's above do sing, and all is right. And when us works enough, them sees it. Them sees it, and us gets us holy reward. Hornet can actually help Loam work by running on a nearby treadmill. After 45 seconds or so of running, a single rosary might pop out of the device, further illustrating how the faith of these bugs is exploited for labor. Another example of a bug fully buying into the Citadel's religion is the Old Penitent. The Old Penitent is a bug locked away in the Slab, a prison complex built to punish those convicted of sinning against the Citadel. But the Old Penitent doesn't view his situation that way, saying to Hornet, "Prisoner? I understand you not.
I don't remember
There
this
is
guy
no
either,
prison here.
actually. Like,
This is a holy place of forgiveness.
how did I miss so many
Please,
NPCs?
speak with reverence." Even after
Am
being
I just
freed by
forgetting them,
Hornet,
because I
he
never had to return to
refuses to
them?
leave, saying, "By the
It took
grace
me
of the
months to beat
Citadel,
this game.
I am here as a penitent. Here I can hide from the shame of my sins, until they are withered away by time. Leave this place? Please, strike me down dead before you speak such blasphemy again." The Old Penitent also has the following Needlein dialogue. "From wastes, from darkness, drawn down, blessed call. Sisters, accord. Silence above." This dialogue seems to indicate that the Old Penitent was one of the bugs from the nameless town above. He was drawn into Farloom by whispered promises, and found himself locked away in a prison cell he can never leave.
I see.
But the
That's
cruelty of the
yeah.
Slab doesn't just end with the prisoners. Even the jailers are trapped here. The Old Penitent explains, "They too are penitents. In a past age, that caste committed their own sacrilege against the Citadel. A sin long forgotten, but so grave that their offspring and the offspring of their offspring carry the guilt with them still. To serve here is their only hope of absolution." The fate of the Guardflies makes clear that the Citadel is just
Maybe I do
about
remember that
using
guy.
guilt and sin as
I
justifications
did never talk to
to
him again
force
after the
bugs
first
into
time.
endless servitude. Hornet is generally a fairly nice person, always trying to help people and do the right thing, but even she has no sympathy for the Guardflies and genuinely wants them all dead. She's like me with grubs.
I
Given
see.
what can happen to Hornet during the events of Silksong, I can't really say that I'm surprised she feels this way. Hornet even hopes that killing the matriarch of the jailers, Broodmother, will end their race for good. But if she returns to the Broodmother arena, it turns out a new broodling has already
I did see
appeared to
this,
carry
actually.
on the species. But for some reason, the game won't let Hornet kill the baby. This is an example of ludonarrative dissidence. But these aren't the only bugs born into a special kind of service. The Squirm of the Blasted Steppes were seemingly chosen by the Citadel to act as judges of the pilgrims approaching the Grand Gate. A lore tablet just outside a Squirm nest reads, "Bug born of Farloom, you have been chosen. May our Citadel's holy gilding harden your soft shell. Stand eternal as our arbiter, that no bug-bearing sin shall step within our sacred halls." If Hornet plays the Needlein for the Squirm found here, they will beautifully sing, "Let's grow holy. Let's grow
Then you kill them.
stronger.
You get them for the
We
journal.
are chosen. All are chosen. We will serve. All will serve." It seems from birth these creatures are brainwashed by the Citadel into believing that they are doing holy work by using a mallet to brutally bash in the heads of any pilgrim they happen to think is guilty of sin. Similarly, the Vaultborn, found in the Whispering Vaults, are literally raised in dark vaults and then forced to become scroll readers for the Vault Keepers. Unlike the Broodling, Hornet can kill the baby Squirm and Vaultborn, so hopefully Team Cherry will patch the game so you can actually kill this thing. But the Citadel's system of cruelty didn't just stop with the borders of the Citadel itself. The bugs underneath also fell victim to its whims. One such area affected by the Citadel is Greymoor. According to Krull and Benjen, the two best characters in the game,
They
Greymoor
had-
used to grow
yeah, they were
all
pretty
sorts
fun,
of
I
food,
guess.
But at some point, the
One of the
Citadel
best
ordered
characters
these
in the
bugs
game,
to
but
instead dedicate
they had a lot
themselves
of
to catching the
personality.
silk dregs that drifted down from the Citadel and re-spool them. As a result, the bugs of Greymore had to resort to a less involved form of farming, breeding muck roaches for their
Oh, yeah.
disgusting roach guts. The smog and exhaust of the Citadel was rerouted using the exhaust organ, and dumped into current-day biowater, polluting the region and incurring the hatred of the
I see.
Stillkin, a faction of swamp dwellers skilled in trap setting. Now, I know a lot of you watching this are huge fans of biowater, and of course I am too, but in the lore, the creation of biowater should be seen as a bad thing. The Citadel even turned on their own warriors. There once was an order of pin-wielding maidens known as the Pinstresses. As the last remaining member of the cast, hidden away at the edge of the blasted steppes, explains, "Our Grand Citadel learnt well from the training of Pinstresses past. Then it went and turned those teachings upon us. Despite our superior skills, our numbers have always been few, and their strength overwhelmed. Of my once revered order, only 2 of us remain, wormed away in Farloom's forgotten corners, and my Pin sibling, she's lost herself to more peaceable pursuits. The only other living member, Seamstress, has given up her violent past, instead turning to stitching and sewing, but the decommissioned automaton near her home indicates that she was indeed a powerful warrior at some point. A third Pinstress can be found in the putrefied ducks, but she's long dead by the time Hornet finds her. It's not clear why the Citadel targeted these women. Perhaps their strength was viewed as a threat to the Citadel's order. I mean, who wouldn't be afraid of this absolute beast? Bugs
That
from
was a
the
fun
Forge
fight.
home were requested to relocate to the Deep Docks, under the promise of holy esteem from the Citadel. And bugs of the Deep Docks that were not fulfilling their duties were punished by 4 brothers Cygnus and Gron, although the extent of all this is unknown. The Citadel demanded everything they possibly could of these bugs, even trying to deny them death itself. A bulletin board located in a Ventrica station reads, "Due to unacceptably high injury and unsanctioned deaths, Ventrica travel shall henceforth be denied to all. For Farloom Eternal, a bug who serves must never die."
I see.
The Citadel doesn't want its bugs to die, not out of any concern for the bugs themselves, but because dead bugs can't serve the Citadel.
Yeah, they gotta
All
keep
the
up
Citadel's cruelty
productivity.
was in service to continuing its song eternally. But what exactly is this song the Citadel is making pilgrims sing? And what does any of this have to do with Grandmother Silk? None of these pilgrims even mention her. To answer these questions, we have to talk about the Citadel's true purpose, that of a cage. Maskmaker explains this for us in no uncertain terms. At one point, Hornet can say to him, "You speak of the Citadel. Its former function has failed, but I can still sense its purpose, some. It is church and cage both." To which
This guy gave
Maskmaker
some of the
replies,
most interesting
"Aye,
lore that I
devised
found.
by your ancestors, that monstrosity, and their wicked, clever minds. A system, or a web they'd likely call it, a way to keep their mother sealed in slumber, and themselves free to lavish in their false rule." With this dialogue interaction, we know that the Citadel itself was actually a system devised by Hornet's ancestors, the Weavers, as a way to keep Grandmother Silk trapped in slumber. This is alluded to in the poem displayed at the beginning of the game, Farloom's Folly. The poem reads, "They see your beauty, so frail and fine. They see your peace, woven of faith and toil. They forget your heart, bound in slumber and servitude. When you wake, they shall see your truth, a beast's nature bare to all." This poem is specifically about the relationship between the inhabitants of Farloom and Grandmother Silk. The first line describes how the bugs of Farloom perceive Grandmother Silk's beauty. This might be referring to her silk, or the fact that Grandmother Silk fuels the existence of the Citadel. The second line emphasizes that Grandmother Silk is only a piece due to the faith and toil displayed by the bugs of the Citadel. The third line states that Grandmother Silk is bound in slumber and servitude. We can see this clearly when visiting the cradle at the top of the Citadel. Grandmother Silk can be found here, sleeping inside a giant cocoon of silk. Underneath this cocoon, we can see that several strands of silk have been pulled out in parallel. The bugs of the Citadel have constructed a giant loom to extract the precious silk from their sleeping monarch. They have even made this image of the cocoon inside a crook the symbol of their entire kingdom. But the last 2 lines of Farloom's Folly tell us that Grandmother Silk's subjugation won't last forever, and once she awakens, the bugs of Farloom will have to face her true, beastly form. I wonder if this will be important later. It seems this slumber was achieved through the song sung by the pilgrims of the Citadel. Inside the Whispering Vaults, Hornet can find the corpse of the Vault's pontiff, accompanied by a sacred psalm cylinder, a device containing the melody of the Vault Keepers. Vault Keeper Cardinius explains, "Only our pontiff, lived long and low within our vault. They held the melody, jealously, covetously, a learning for the highest vault keeper, and them alone. A truth they were told to have found, there in the dark, something within the melody or the words, something to set them silent. We're never explicitly told what that melody contains, but playing the needle in near the pontiff's corpse reveals the following messages. Damned bugs. We prayed a cage. We sang your chains. Divine silk. This indicates that the songs and prayers of the Citadel were actually designed to imprison Grandmother Silk.
Interesting.
And this truth was hidden from the bugs of the Citadel. This appears to be corroborated by the Weaver lore tablet located near the Weaver corpse spire in Moss Home, which reads, Sister, Spider, husk bound to moss, watch over these bugs born low, raised up by fervor fostered, born and caught within our web unknowing. The pilgrims weren't even aware of Grandmother Silk's existence. Instead, it was the weavers that were seen as holy. Weaver effigies found throughout the land show that the pilgrims prayed to the weavers, viewing them as graceful, blessed, and even divine. Even by the time Hornet arrives in Farloom, massive burial spires dedicated to the weaver corpses can still be found, with plaques built by the pilgrims stating that they offer song to the weavers eternal. Even some of the inhabitants of the Citadel hold deference to Hornet, referring to her as a first child. But why exactly did the weavers turn on Grandmother Silk in the first place? Was she just a really callous and cruel monarch, similar to Lord Farquaad in the 2001 hit film Shrek 1?
Gotta bring it back to Shrek.
Our best glimpse into what life looked like for the weavers while living under Grandmother Silk is from the memory of Widow, the only weaver still alive in Farloom by the start of the game. After defeating her, we see a memory of the weavers playing harps as Grandmother Silk watches over them. The following dialogue then appears on screen. For her light, eternal, our song sustains. We know that Grandmother Silk does want song, as the Silk Heart memory in Whiteboard says the following lines. Their voices, their song, to devote, eternal. They are ours, bound forever. So before the Citadel, the weavers had to sustain song for the monarch eternally. The weavers must have felt trapped in this system and decided to create the Citadel, using a new song to put Grandmother Silk to sleep and enthrall the pilgrims of Farloom in their fake religion. Through this action, the weavers not only obtained freedom from sustaining the eternal song, but they also came to perceive themselves as the rulers of Farloom. The harps the weavers first played the eternal song on for Grandmother Silk can still be found in the cradle, fallen completely into disuse. A thread memory of Widow can be found here, likely because she is the only weaver still loyal to Grandmother Silk, but we'll talk about her more later. Aside from Widow, another weaver Hornet sort of meets is a being known as First Sinner.
Oh yeah.
This weaver's lore is also very difficult to make sense of, but
That
seems
was a
relevant
fight.
to our current discussion. First Sinner can be found locked away in a cage sealed with runes. Inside the cage, a weaver corpse can be found. She offers to bind her strength to Hornets, but unlike the other corpses, this action actually awakens First Sinner, who tries to murder Hornet. However, this fight appears to take place in some kind of memory, as opposed to in real life, since dying in this fight doesn't spawn a cocoon.
That's right.
So it seems First Sinner is just a memory here.
It's actually
not
kind of
actually
annoying in
alive.
that case because you have to go
If
back to
First
the
Sinner
bench
is
to.
defeated, Hornet witnesses a
fill your
memory from her
tools.
revealing the true nature of the Weavers. It seems Grandmother Silk actually evolved the Weavers from Farlids, common bugs found in Farloom. First Sinner reflects on this revelation saying, She called us daughters. She called us divine. She lied. Hornet even mentions that the Farlids remind her of herself in some way. First Sinner's rage
those
seems to be a
things.
mixture of feeling cursed with silk, given to her by Grandmother Silk, and being cursed to know the truth of her nature. We also know she had the power to weave silk into blazing runes, which she uses extensively in her fight. As a side note, in the game's code and concept art for First Sinner, she is referred to as First Weaver. So perhaps First Sinner remembers the truth about the Weaver's origins, because she was the first Farlid to ever be transformed. So why was First Sinner locked up? The tablet placed over the cage says the following. Penitent, first of the first, guilty of the sin of apostasy, penance by constriction, absolution denied. One possibility is that First Sinner is the catalyst that set off the Weavers turning against Grandmother Silk. Perhaps she was imprisoned by Grandmother Silk for calling her a liar and revealing her secret, and this convinced the other Weavers to turn on her too. At one point, First Sinner mentions, our Silk, our rage, perhaps implying that she led the first resistance group against Grandmother Silk. This interpretation gives us a good motive for why the Weavers turned on Grandmother Silk, but I have a few issues with it. We are told the citadel was devised by the weavers, and describing First Sinner as a penitent feels very much in line with the citadel. They are the ones who came up with the
That's
entire
true.
faith and toil system, not Grandmother Silk. Second, if Grandmother Silk chained up First Sinner, why is she still chained up now? Why wasn't she freed or given a proper burial? Third, we see the citadel sigil, the silk cocoon, on the cage itself, further supporting that this cage was created by the citadel. I think it makes more sense to say First Sinner was imprisoned by her fellow weavers. In this case, the sin of apostasy committed by First Sinner was claiming the weavers weren't divine. This revelation would have been devastating to the weavers' control of Farlum. They needed to be seen as divine by the pilgrims, so they decided to seal First Sinner away, regardless of whether or not they even believed her. I think this explanation ties in better with the information we have to work with. As for the "our rage" line, it seems First Sinner is mimicking a lot of the dialogue found near other weaver corpses. All the other weavers say, "our silk, our memory," not "our rage." First Sinner also calls Farlum accursed instead of haunted, and she kind of lies to Hornet about letting her bind her. So I think some of First Sinner's dialogue can be explained by her being a bit deceiving, compared to her sisters, who are a bit more straightforward about what they want from Hornet. Alternatively, our rage could imply other weavers joined First Sinner's anger, but were also imprisoned by the weavers running the citadel. Overall, I think First Sinner's fate is a reflection of just how far the weavers will go to cling onto their rule of Farlum. They would much rather imprison one of their own kin than admit the fact that they aren't divine beings. Perhaps that was the only choice they had to keep the web of the citadel from collapsing. Regardless, it seems the weavers' reign over the citadel was not destined to last. We know at some point control of the citadel was handed over to the citadel bugs. Conductor Balador tells us this explicitly when he says, "The mantle of rule, claimed greedily from Farlum's fading first children, those bitter weavers. It was yoke, not crown." In Balador's possession is a rune harp, an ancient weaver recording instrument containing the last words of the weavers, which reads, "Sisters, spiders, the burden is past. These simple bugs shall bear it in full. Never to cease, never to silence. We shall die and wait and pray that one may come of silken strength enough to weave us free." This record and Balador's comments tell us that running the citadel was a difficult task, and at some point the weavers decided to flee Farlum. In the lower lands of Farlum, Hornet can find strange gates barring access to various weave nests. In these weave nests, it seems the weavers schemed against Grandmother Silk. In Weave Nest Atla in Moss Grotto, Hornet can find a lore tablet that reads, "This low her gaze escaped. Prepare, sisters, weave hope anew, that we might break free this accursed web born of our naive foundation." It seems at some point during their rule, it became clear to the weavers that they could not keep Grandmother Silk trapped in slumber using song forever. Instead, they would have to devise a new plan to deal with her. One such plan was Eva, also found in Weave Nest Atla. Eva is a strange being confined to live her life within an iron shell. She is a child of the weavers, but created from rune and shell instead of more traditional methods. There are two other aspects regarding the nature of weavers I have yet to mention. First of all, it seems there are only female weavers, considering they always refer to each other saying sisters.
Yeah.
This is similar to how all Labubus are female. So that's
are they?
pretty cute. Second, weavers are born with a curse that makes the act of conceiving a child excruciatingly painful, rendering it a near impossible task. I was unable to find any information on if conceiving a child is excruciatingly painful for Labubus.
You just gotta look harder. Might find some interesting art along the way.
As someone who also finds the act of getting pregnant extremely difficult himself, I relate a lot to the weavers here. I suspect this aspect of their nature is due to Grandmother Silk, and the idea that she made them like this supports the idea that she only ever wanted the weavers so they could serve her. You might wonder why the weavers created such a cruel system with a citadel, but it seems they didn't have the best role model. But not all weavers were doomed to be barren. Horn explains to Eva that her mother was able to overcome the curse's limits, which sounds impressive until you remember there are dozens of little weavers running all over Deep Nest and Hollow Knight. Hopefully Team Cherry will explain exactly what's going on with these things, because as of right now, it makes me uncomfy. The weavers weren't too happy with their creation though. A rune harp found in Weave Nest Atla reads, "Hide her deep, the despised child, our shame shown in shell of iron. She is a wish cast vain, divinity mimicked in form too frail. It
Mhm.
seems Eva was an attempt by the Weavers to create a divine being capable of
So
usurping
she was
Grandmother
just too
Silk,
frail. That's why
but
we
she
never
failed to
saw
be the
her.
powerful being
She
they had
couldn't
hoped for.
escape her cage.
This is similar to the events depicted in the hit film Shrek
I
2,
see.
where Shrek and
Of
company
course.
created the giant gingerbread man, Mongo, who also tragically suffered from his form being too frail for the task assigned to him. Another attempt by the Weavers to stop the awakening of Grandmother Silk was through the creation of the Snare Setter. One can be found in Weaveness Atla, and needle and dialogue observable there shows the Weavers hoped it could be
This
used
thing
to
was
keep them
important,
free.
and I just found it randomly
Eva
off screen.
explains the purpose of the Snare Setter more plainly. Small things, but tests for larger forms. I still remember their thoughts as they worked, their desperation and their hunger. Another hopeless attempt to wrest their freedom. All ended in failure, of course. In Weaveness Merglin in Bilewater, a lore tablet mentions that the Weaver's silk will wane at some point, perhaps indicating that the Weavers knew their power was fading. The strangest place a weave nest can be found is deep below Farloom in the Abyss. The Abyss in Farloom is very similar to the one found in Hallownest.
Yeah,
It
very.
features the same void tendrils, a lake of void, and massive spires. There's even hints of the ancient civilization here too. At one point, Hornet refers to the void as being below all things, perhaps indicating that no matter where you are in the world of Hollow Knight, if you go down far enough, you'll find the Abyss. In
Makes
Weave
sense.
Nest Absalom, there is evidence of the Weavers researching the void. A rune depicting the void tendrils can be found, and it seems the Weavers were able to collect void within glass jars. But it doesn't seem like the Weavers went much further with any of their void experiments, as nothing here seems to have been used against Grandmother Silk at all. In fact, it doesn't seem like any of these traps or mechanisms worked. The only thing left the Weavers could do was flee. In Weaveness Syndrome in Farfields, hidden in a secret room, Hornet can find a map depicting pathways out of Farloom. The nearby runeharp reads, "Flee, sisters. Flee until your strength exhausts. So far you may escape at last her silken sight. To start anew, to sustain, free of web and service eternal." So to briefly summarize, it seems at some point during their rule, the Weavers realized they couldn't keep Grandmother Silk in slumber indefinitely. Whether that was because they weren't bringing in enough pilgrims, or because of their own waning silk, or because 90% of the bugs in this kingdom can't sing for shit, it was clear something had to be done.
Fair enough.
The Weavers experimented with creating their own god, but that didn't work. They tried to construct a tool to bind Grandmother's silk tight, but that also failed. So ultimately the Weavers decided to flee.
And we made it
Farloom.
work.
The only problem
With
was
some
that doing
snail
so
help.
would end the Citadel's song, hastening Grandmother Silk's awakening. To combat this, the Weavers decided to hand the Citadel over to the bugs themselves, tricking them with a technique we in the cryptospace call a rug pull. Despite their flight, the Weavers didn't entirely lose hope. It seems the Weavers prayed for one of silken strength to one day come and free them from their web. A few Weavers even stayed behind so that they could help this savior should they ever make their way to Farloom. The Weavers also left servitors to watch over their weave nests and await their return. By the time Hornet arrives in Farloom, it seems there are three main factions in charge of running the place: the Conductors, the Vault Keepers, and the Architects. The game isn't exactly clear when these different factions took shape within the Citadel. It appears they've been around since before the Weavers left, given that both Vault Keeper Cardinius and the 12th Architect seem well aware of the Weavers. These three factions were also given the threefold melody, which pilgrims needed to reach the cradle. The Conductors seem to have the most responsibility, declaring edicts, sanctioning projects, and even getting directly involved with various experiments within the Citadel. They also seem to be in the know about the Citadel's true purpose as a cage for Grandmother Silk, giving Conductor Romano's incredibly ominous poem, Farloom's Folly, as well as Conductor Balador's possession of that one extremely incriminating rune harp. This knowledge seemed to weigh heavy on the Conductors. Balador questions if he would have ever accepted the duty if he had known the cost. And of course, Conductor Romano's poem seems to indicate a sense of disdain for the Citadel. While we never see Conductor Romano in-game, we do see a Conductor's mask all the way on the edge of Farloom.
Oh.
Whether this was Romano's mask or not, it seems
Maybe it
one
is.
Conductor chose to flee Farloom for good, instead
Like
of
he
wearing
had
the
someone.
mantle of
I mean, if
rule.
he gave the poem,
I'll
then
be honest, I'm sure being a Conductor isn't the easiest job in the world, but it's gotta be better
poem
than
had to
being
be
the guy
recorded
who has
somehow.
to feed maggot gruel to muckroaches all day. It's gotta be an order of magnitude more difficult, I swear. The Vault Keepers were charged with guarding the secrets of the Citadel. The scroll readers spent their entire lives reading and memorizing prayer scrolls. They also kept psalm cylinders of various prayer songs that could be played back using the proper equipment. From Vault Keeper Cardenius' dialogue, it seems the Vault Keepers viewed the acquisition of knowledge as a way to transcend their own minds and bodies. Vault Keeper Cardenius is also interesting in that he really hates the Weavers, calling them cursed and implying that they bring death wherever they go. So it's possible
He was
Vault
aggressive.
Keepers were aware of some
do
nefarious
remember that.
deeds done by the Weavers during their rule. But Chakra also calls them vicious, so it's possible the views on Weavers changed all over Farloom after they left. The architects seem tasked with maintaining the Citadel itself, creating the Cogwork core, as well as developing new technologies for the Citadel to use. Much of their craft is owed to the tools created by the Weavers themselves. And similar to the Weavers, it seems the architects were also interested in creating life. The first architect designed the first Cogwork Heart, which was used in the Sentinels, an order of knights that served the Citadel. According to the 12th architect, the Sentinels ventured, even beyond these walls, to see all bugs brought forced safe to serve the Citadel. The use of the word forced here kind of makes me think the Sentinels were kidnapping bugs to work in the Citadel, but the Sentinel we meet in game is pretty nice, so I really don't want to believe that they did something kind of problematic like kidnapping.
I mean,
But it wasn't
don't
just
know.
the Sentinel robots that the architects created. The numerous Cogworks enemies that populate the core of the Citadel also owe their construction to the architects.
Makes sense.
But the source of their power seems to come from somewhere else. Whenever one of these machines is destroyed, these strange white flies escape from their shells. These flies are never directly referenced by anyone in-game, but in the files they are called silk flies. And these things show up all over Farloom. But where exactly do they come from? I believe the answer to that question can be found in the White Ward, a sub-area of the Citadel that provided the setting for horrible experiments. It's here where bugs of the Citadel had silk injected directly into their shells. It seems this was done to extend the life of the bugs. The caretaker explains, "Just think of them greedily shoving the silk into their shells, the madness that overcame them. Eternal life for mortal bugs." The Citadel's reasoning for this can be explained by a lore tablet found within White Ward that says, "Oath of the White Ward. While song must be sung, none may falter. Infirmary, sickness, death, all are banished from our Citadel." In other words, the Citadel couldn't afford to lose bugs to death because they needed to continue singing the song, keeping Grandmother Silk in slumber. If bugs did die, their bodies were cremated so the silk could be recovered. This process of recycling silk over and over again caused the wills and pain of these bugs to live on through the silk, trapped in a state of torture even after death. But it seems the bugs of the White Ward went even further with their experiments. It seems the silk flies, found inside of the Cogworks bugs, were also created here. Inside White Ward, we can find a strange device, referred to as a silk siphon within the game's code. Huddled around this device are these silk flies. We can also see silk flies trapped inside this container, and an identical container can be found in the center of the silk siphon. One of these containers can also be found on the ground next to the 12th architect. Playing the needle in the silk siphon room reveals the following dialogue. One line in particular is interesting to me. "To serve, beyond shell." To the right of this room is a chamber filled with hundreds of corpses. A choral commandment can be found at the end of the room, which reads, "Bug of voice grown hoarse or shell fallen frail, you have been selected for duty most sacred. Become our light, our guide in darkness, that others worthy may climb to join the holy song."
That sounds
So
great.
it seems the Citadel was transforming the silk-infused souls of bugs into silk flies that could be used to provide life for the Kingdom of Farloom, as well as power the various automatons working within the core. Even massive constructs like the fourth chorus release
this
several
guy.
dozen
Yeah,
silk
there's a lot
flies
of
when
them.
they're destroyed.
Tons of them.
Given the silk flies seen on the 12th Architect's corpse after they die,
Oh,
it seems the architects were also powered by silk flies.
I didn't know that. I
The
never
only
saw
exception
the.
to this I
I
found
never went
is the
back, I guess,
Cogwork
after
dancers,
that.
which we know were created not from the soul of a
How does the
Farloom
12th
bug,
architect die?
but from the soul
Like,
of one of the princes of Verdania.
They did go
When
back
speaking
after
to the Green
Act 3
Prince after
started.
defeating the Cogwork dancers, Hornet says, "His
They were
soul is
fine.
now free from that shell of iron." It seems the Weavers were still in Farloom when the silk flies were created, since we can see a few of them in Weavenest Atla. We can even see some of them in the Carmelita memory.
Interesting.
So it seems they've been around for a long, long time. We know that some things change.
Maybe sometimes
throughout the
they're natural?
lifespan
I
of
don't
the
know.
Citadel, but it can be difficult to track down exactly when these changes took place. For example, in one section of the Citadel, there's an unused statue base. The statue that used to be here was likely Pius Isamor, who was
Aha.
at some point hidden away within the Whispering Vaults. Pius Isamor mentions that the citadel is built from simple stone, bare and unadorned, but that is certainly not the case by the time Hornet arrives in Farloom. So when did these changes happen? Pius Isamor does mention that the citadel was bequeathed to the bugs by the weavers. Bequeathing can mean to give something, but it also has a sense of handing something down. So it's possible the gilding of the citadel didn't take place until after the weavers gave control of it over to the citadel bugs. But the wording is vague, and I don't get the sense that the citadel bugs would necessarily be more interested in turning the citadel into some gilded shining city than the weavers were. One big change that almost definitely took place after the weavers left was the completion of the citadel core, which seems to be referenced in the last edict of the conductors, which reads, "And lo, is eternity sustained. By Architect's Claw, we welcome that final form of dial and rotor, and soul gladly given. The perfect, unfaltering voice. The cogwork core is a massive structure of cogs and shafts in the middle of the citadel. We know from the 12th architect that the core was built to sustain the song. The core is filled with cylinders with pips on them, similar to what you would see in a music box.
Yeah.
And we know from the Cogwork Clapper journal entry that there are bells and cymbals within the depth of the core. And at the very top of the core are rows of statues capable of producing song. So basically, the act of sustaining the eternal song could be done automatically using the core. Even the maintenance could be done by the Cogwork automatons. This might even explain why the elevator at the entrance to the Citadel goes down into the underworks instead of up into the Citadel proper. If pilgrims aren't needed to sing the eternal song anymore, they can just be directed down into the underworks. It seems this was the final state of the Citadel under the rule of the conductors. Bugs were either toiling away in the underworks, locked away in the slab, or trapped as silk flies inside the cogwork shells created by the architects. The bugs themselves were replaced by the cogwork core, so not only was the religion itself fake, but the ones doing the worshipping were fake as well. The Citadel's promise truly was an empty one. As the caretaker puts it, inside and out, it's nothing but a grand gilded lie. And despite all the harsh schemes devised by both the Weavers and the Citadel cast, Grandmother Silk continued to awaken from her slumber. Conductor Balador admits to Hornet that this outcome was inevitable, saying, "The mantle of rule, claimed greedily from Farloom's fading first children, those bitter weavers. It was yoke, not crown. Now in our Citadel silence, we share their truth. Only one monarch's claw ever clutched this kingdom, though we raised our voices to cry otherwise." The Citadel cast was finally forced to face the same reality the Weavers had. Even in her subjugation, Grandmother Silk was still the only true power in Farloom. At this point, it seems the Citadel finally fell silent, with only the automated cogwork core left capable of sustaining the song. But it wasn't enough. We aren't exactly sure when this happened, but at some point the land of Farloom became haunted by Grandmother Silk. Her threads reached down from the top of the kingdom, starting with the bugs in the Citadel, and eventually reaching all the way down to lower Farloom, binding the bugs of the land to her will. These threads can be seen occasionally when bugs are defeated, as well as when Hornet plays her needle in near them. But what exactly does the haunting do to these bugs? At the top of the marrow, Hornet can discover a mysterious building. Inside, a grunting bug and strange squelching sounds can be heard. An operating table can be found in this room as well. It seems a bug obsessed with the haunting started cutting into bugs to examine the effects of the haunting itself.
I see.
This bug, known as the Learned Pilgrim, was actually going to have their own quest, but was ultimately cut from the game. But their findings can still be found written down on a lore tablet, which starts, "In the air, the water, everywhere. After generations and generations of using silk, Farloom has become covered in silk dregs. This can be seen most clearly in the Citadel." The tablet continues, "Inside their shells, twisted inside, guts, tightest around heart, pulsing rhythm. The silk has even made its way into the shells of bugs, wrapping itself around their very hearts. The presence of silk here is likely due to the experiments of the White Ward. Hornet and the caretaker come to the conclusion that the threads implanted into the pilgrims from the experiments there would be carried down into their offspring, making the bugs of Farloom even more susceptible to the haunting." The tablet finishes, "Sick, alive, dead? Something worse. Deeper. Must look deeper." The haunting doesn't just enslave the wills of living bugs, but it can also reanimate bugs that have already died,
Yeah.
allowing Grandmother Silk to puppet them from above. Under the haunting, bugs long dead rose to their feet to mindlessly continue the tasks they had in life. Pavo, from Belhart, who was caught in threads in a similar way to the haunting, describes the experience as not particularly comfortable, saying, "It is difficult, upsetting even to think. Strange, sad memories, not my own, and my own thoughts smothered amidst the tangle. If one could choose to connect themselves to something grander, that curse may seem a wonder. For myself, it now seems a horror." According to the dialogue from the Silkart Memory and White Ward, it seems Grandmother Silk is seeking union with the bugs of Farloom, so it makes sense that foreign thoughts would invade Pavo's mind as such. While the haunting's power was strong, it didn't enslave everyone. Some bugs like Pondcatcher Reed and Balo resisted the force that claimed their peers. It's not clear why some bugs were able to resist the haunting's power.
Because they do look
Benjamin
just like
and
enemies.
Krull, the two best characters in the game, share their own theories about it, saying, "The haunting? Oh, we's got that all worked out. Benjamin and me are a right pair of philosophers when we bend our minds to it. It's faith that gets you. It's all caused by being too devout." Yeah, or maybe not being devout enough. Or maybe it's safest not to think about it at all. We could all learn a thing or two from these wise men.
I guess
At
so.
some point, probably during the haunting, Grandmother Silk also created her own children entirely out of silk, Phantom and Lace. In the Silkheart cutscene after defeating Lace in the cradle, we get some dialogue hinting at Grandmother Silk's motivation for creating Lace. "Better a child spun mad than none. Better a child spun frail than none. Better a child spun pure than them. One to wish our waking. From our silk, a child born loyal." So it seems Lace was created to be a loyal replacement for the Weavers who betrayed Grandmother Silk in the past. Caretaker describes Lace as follows: "Look of a child and a mind to match, but hers been up wandering this citadel longer than most, even in its long silence. Way 'fore you came and roused its ire." So Lace is kinda like a 1,000-year-old kid, like you see in those Asian cartoons. So that's kinda weird.
I see.
But then again, the Knight in Hollow Knight is technically using the body of an unborn fetus when you think about it. So maybe this is par for the course for Hollow Knight lore. The point is, it seems Grandmother Silk really emphasized the child aspect of Lace when creating her, perhaps thinking that would make her more loyal. But that plan created its own problems, as we'll see. Phantom is the other daughter created by Grandmother Silk, but she appears to be deteriorating by the time Hornet finds her hidden away in the exhaust organ under the citadel. Her Needlein dialogue contains lines like "forgotten" and "discarded," implying that Grandmother Silk wasn't as invested in her as she was Lace. But despite their different stations in Farloom, Lace and Phantom share a similar tragic fate. Inside this area is an empty tank. Playing the Needlein reveals a thread memory of Lace talking to her sister inside the tank. The dialogue reads, "She spun us to fade. She spun us to break. Why us, sister? Why us?" Lace seems to resent her mother for her form, saying, "This weak, wasting existence. This was not life, just a husk shaped to act as a child." Lace's Hunter's journal entry also claims that it would take a lot of silk to maintain Lace's form. So it seems Grandmother Silk's silk-spun children were fragile creations. Phantom has come to accept this by the events of the game, asking Hornet in her Needlein dialogue to free her from her fading fate. Lace, on the other hand, still isn't too happy about the whole being born frail thing. I wonder if this will be important later. At some point during
Maybe
all this,
just a little.
choir bugs were sent out from Farloom to track down and retrieve the Weavers and their kin. The cages used to transport these Weavers can be found in the cradle, giving us insight into where they were captured. A frail bug with 1/8 Weaver ancestry was found in the Sand Sea Waste. Another 1/8 Weaver was mortally wounded and taken in the Black Barrens. And a 1/4 ancestry Weaver was staked to serve and taken under the City of Steel. We can also find a Coral Commandment possessed by one of the bugs that kidnapped Hornet, which reads, "Full chamber to the kingdom of the White Worm. Claim the Weaver in half part. Last of our line. Sense strong with silk. Resistance anticipated. Quell with rune cage." What's interesting
I don't think I
about this line is
pieced
the
together that
phrase,
was about Hornet.
"Sensed strong with silk," which possibly implies that the Weavers could be sensed from Farloom, possibly explaining how the locations of the Weavers were known. It seems most likely that Grandmother Silk ordered these Weavers captured. Her exact motives are never directly stated, but it seems likely to me that Grandmother Silk wants these Weavers for their silken strength. Maybe she intends to bind these weavers to herself, making her even stronger. While we know several weavers were brought back to Farloom, only one can be found alive in-game, Widow. Widow is a pretty mysterious character in the lore. According to Hornet, her mask was forcibly removed, and heavy pins were stuck in her spine to keep her from making her own silk. Widow is a fanatic for Grandmother Silk, and a thread memory of her worshipping her in the cradle can be found. Widow is a bit crazed when Hornet finds her, and that seems to be the result of her mask being removed. We know from Hornet's interaction with Mask Maker in this game that masks can in fact alter a creature's personality. But who exactly removed Widow's mask, and why? One theory is that Widow is the quarter weaver who was captured and staked to service. That would make some sense, since Widow has been literally staked in the back, and is now serving Grandmother Silk. However, the stake to service line might be referring to what state this weaver was in when they were first found by the Choirbugs, not the ultimate fate they faced once back in Farloom. Aside from that, some of Widow's dialogue makes me think that something else is going on here. When she meets Hornet, Widow refers to her as spawn of those who dared to flee. This line implies to me that Widow didn't flee Farloom like her sisters. Otherwise it would come off a bit hypocritical. In her thread memory in the cradle, she says, "Of the first, the last," and "Our mother, true." These lines imply Widow has a much more direct connection with Grandmother Silk, as opposed to being only a 1/4 weaver born somewhere outside of Farloom. I suspect Widow was the only weaver still alive in Farloom after all the others fled. As for the removed mask and bounded silk, there are several possibilities. Perhaps Widow was punished by her fellow weavers for continuing to support Grandmother Silk, even after she was put to sleep. Although, why wouldn't they just imprison her like they did for Sinner? Maybe Grandmother Silk cruelly had Widow punished for the crimes of her fleeing sisters, and then kept her around as a servant. Or maybe Widow did it to herself, forcibly pulling her own mask off, similar to pulling out one's own teeth, as some kind of demented demonstration of fealty to her mother.
It could
Nothing
be.
is strictly
She seems a
confirmed,
little
though, and I'll
crazy.
be curious to see what theories evolve around this character. As for the weavers that did flee Farloom, it seems their goal was still to create a child that could usurp Grandmother Silk. One of these groups ended up in Deep Nest, where one of its members, Hera the Beast, became queen. Deep Nest bordered a larger civilization called Hollow Nest, ruled by the Pale King and the White Lady. At some point, the Pale King asked Hera to become a dreamer, a role which would require her to fall into an eternal sleep. Hera agreed, but only if the Pale King gave her a child. The exact details of what happened next are far too dangerous to discuss here on YouTube, so please type this URL into your browser if you really want to know. Either way, the result of all this was the birth of Hornet.
I wonder if that actually leads anywhere.
We see during the Red Memory in Act 3 of Silksong that the Weavers were watching over Hornet closely, hoping to draw out her Weaver nature, saying, "Prove yourself more Weaver than Worm." But Hera challenged this, telling Hornet, "Ignore them, daughter. They're whispers. Greater, grander, Weaver, Guardian, Queen, those are their desires, not your own. Certainly not mine. Only if you resist them, you might see it. Another hope, beyond." So it seems the Weaver saw Hornet's strength as a pale being, and hoped that she would finally help them defeat Grandmother Silk. Hera, on the other hand, seemingly had no interest in this plan, encouraging Hornet to forge her own path. There's just one wrinkle to all this I just don't understand. During the events of Hollow Knight, we see that the Weaver's den in Deep Nest is completely abandoned, save for one Weaver which can be spotted watching the night. According to the Weaver Song charm found in this area, these Weavers actually left Hollow Nest for their old home, Farloom. But if that's the case, what happened to them? The Weave Nest tablets make it pretty clear that they wanted to stay as far away from Grandma Silky as possible. The only possible indication of where the Hollow Nest Weavers went can be found in Weave Nest Absalom in the Abyss. In this Weave Nest, Hornet can find the Far Sight item. This item allows observation over vast distances, and can tell Hornet the state of the world. In the real world, this would be a horrifying mass surveillance device, the likes of which only exist in fiction stories, like the classic novel 1984.
Yes, that's
but
how you say
in-game, it basically means the player can now see the game's completion percentage. There are a lot of parallels that can be drawn between this item and the Pale King from Hollow Nest. The design of the object itself vaguely resembles him. The Pale King has an ability described as foresight, allowing him to know the future to some extent. The lore tablet he left for the Hollow Knight in the Black Egg Temple also gives the world sensibility, which allows the player to see the game's completion percentage.
Ah.
The rune effect in the Farsight cutscene also resembles runes we see in the cast-off shell. So it's possible the Weavers designed this device after encountering the Pale King in Hallownest and returning to Farloom. But if that's the case, where are they? Another possibility is that the Weavers encountered a different worm than the Pale King, and that's what inspired them to build the Farsight. We just don't have quite enough information to say for sure. One way or another, Chorus bugs were sent to Hallownest. They eventually captured Hornet within a rune cage and carried her all the way back to Farloom. And now we finally made it to the events of Silksong proper. It's at this point I want to thank a few people for their help on this video, talking lore with me and sharing ideas, as well as the Hollow Knight wiki community in general for just being really cool. Also the modding community as well. It took a bit of time for the wiki and mod communities to build up around Hollow Knight when it released back in 2017. So it's been awesome to watch the community tear Silksong apart like a pack of ravenous hyenas on the Serengeti. It honestly brings a tear to my eye, and I don't even cry that much anymore. As the party arrives in Farloom, a silkfly appears out of nowhere and breaks the rune on Hornet's cage. Hornet escapes from her captors and begins her long trek up to the citadel, telling the chapel maid, "Then I shall seek their citadel. If the veiled bugs would go to such lengths to bring me here, I intend to find out why." Along the way, Hornet will meet beloved characters, such as Quiet Pilgrim, Fearful Pilgrim, Aged Pilgrim,
Everyone's favorites.
Tall Pilgrim, Solemn Pilgrim, Worried Pilgrim, Dejected Pilgrim, Wary Pilgrim, Exhausted Pilgrim,
I didn't realize there were
Pilgrim
so many.
Preacher,
I thought it wasn't the same
Humble
person.
Pilgrim, Scared Pilgrim, Horned Pilgrim, and everyone's favorite, Mort. She'll
Mort.
also find
Gotta love
corpses
Mort.
of her dead ancestors
I think I got Mort
who
killed.
have waited for her arrival so they could share their strength with her in hopes that she may dethrone Grandmother Silk. Hornet will also face some of her greatest threats yet, such as lava, spike traps,
Yes.
thorns, rocks,
Mm-hmm.
bells, steam, and other such obstacles worthy of challenging a godlike being such as
Yeah,
Hornet.
the steam.
Hornet can bear witness to many strange rituals along her way. She can find
I don't
pilgrims
think I saw
enthralled
that.
in worship.
What was that?
She can break bread with bugs still in control of their senses, and she can even learn to play almost 10 whole songs on her needlein.
I
Hornet can
think
even
there are
stumble
only
upon a
3.
strange cult of burning bugs obsessed with flame.
Wait,
Deep
what was
within
this
the
about?
thicket, Hornet can find the father of the flame, a giant totem and god containing the burning corpse of an aged bug. Huh, I wonder if this will be important later. Depending on how she ascends Farloom, Hornet can also be attacked by Lace in Deep Docks. Lace is conducting silkflies in this scene, perhaps indicating that she is the one who freed Hornet from her cage at the start of the game.
Interesting.
Lace seems jealous that her
That
mother is
could
more
be.
interested in Hornet than her, so she has decided to kill Hornet to keep her from reaching her mother at the Citadel. However, if Hornet takes a different route to the Citadel, Lace will just show up and taunt her without actually fighting her. A true hater. In her journey, Hornet may
Interesting.
also come across Haunted Bellheart, a town whose citizens have been strung up by silk into the air. Hornet describes a situation like this: the thread sickness.
Wait, you can
I see into the
without
air,
even
come
fighting
across
Lace, you
actually
can-
fight her if Hornet takes. So she has decided to kill Hornet to keep her from
How do
reaching
you?
her mother at the
What
Citadel.
path is that?
However,
That you avoid
if
this
Hornet
encounter?
takes a different route to the Citadel, Lace will just show up and taunt her without actually fighting her. A true hater. In her journey, Hornet may also come
crazy.
across Haunted Bellheart, a town whose citizens have been strung up by silk into the air. Hornet describes a situation like this: the thread sickness. I've seen its like upon the roads, but there it does not discriminate. The curse that strikes the town, it is driven, focused, a cold use of silk at a concerning scale. Upon investigating the area, Hornet discovers the culprit, Widow. While not the source of the silk itself, Widow can play music upon it to manipulate the silk to her whim. Widow curses the town as a gift for Grandmother Silk, and now sees Hornet as another offering she can give her mother. Once Hornet defeats Widow, she binds the ancestral art Needlein. From here, Hornet has 2 paths to the Citadel. She can either ring the 5 bells located in the bell shrine scattered throughout Farloom and fight the last judge at the peak of the Blasted Steps, or she can venture through Sinner's Road to find the Mist,
I
a
kinda did
strange
both.
region of warped space in Farloom full of silkflies and vengeful wraiths. By playing her Needlein for the silkflies, Hornet can find her way to the exhaust
yeah.
organ and
They were
defeat
there.
Phantom. Upon defeating
Yeah, I did
either
this
Last
first,
Judge
and then I
or
fought
Phantom,
Last Judge.
Hornet will gain
and
access
went in the
to
right
the
way.
Citadel.
That was kind of weird.
Hornet arrives at a seemingly empty citadel. until Lace appears again to taunt her. Hornet tells Lace she knows a higher being is responsible for the haunting overtaking Farloom. Lace mocks Hornet, telling her that she has no chance of defeating Grandmother Silk. Hornet replies by saying, "I found those who claim themselves a god can rarely match the title. And experience tells me even gods can
I guess
fall."
I didn't go far enough
After
for this
this
encounter.
interaction, Grandmother Silk lets out a scream, and the Citadel comes to life with the haunted husks of Citadel bugs. Once Hornet reaches the top of the Citadel and defeats the Cogwork dancers, she must complete the threefold melody, recovering the 3 separate songs held by the architects, keepers, and conductors. But before she can get the melodies, Hornet will have to fight one of the most complex and thematically rich characters in Silksong,
Yes, this guy.
and perhaps even all of fiction, Trabio. Trabio is a tragic character.
Is
His
he?
dream was to bring the Citadel back to life through the magic of the great stage. He called upon Hornet to be his partner in reigniting the flame that fuels the land of Farloom. The two danced a dance of unparalleled beauty, with every step, every turn, every goddamn exploding ball
It's kind of an
executed
annoying
exactly
fight.
as choreographed. But then tragedy struck, when Hornet straight up murders Trabio for real, live on stage. Trabio made the ultimate sacrifice for Farloom, and now he's dead forever. And yet, he lives on in the hearts and minds of children all over the world. Thank you, Trabio. It seems
fight him
recovering the
again.
parts of the threefold melody was
He's
meant to
not
be
dead after the
impossible.
first time.
Hornet mentions that the climb through the Cogwork core to reach the Architect's melody would be near impossible for a normal bug, and Vault Keeper Cardenius even outright states it was against the law for a Vault Keeper to share the Vault Keeper's melody with a non-Vault Keeper. These roadblocks to completing the threefold melody might play into the idea that regular bugs were never actually supposed to be able to reach the top of the Citadel to learn the truth about Grandmother Silk's imprisonment. Hornet plays the completed melody to the statues and is finally granted access to a lift that will transport her to the cradle. At the top of the lift, Hornet finds Lace, waiting for her in a field of flowers. After the battle, the two finally discuss Lace's true nature. Lace expresses frustration at her silken form, viewing it as a cruel mimicry of life. Hornet tries to console her, but Lace is having none of it and promptly dies. With Lace out of the way, Hornet finally confronts Grandmother Silk, the pale being responsible for everything that's happened up to this point. And I'll be honest, I didn't expect her to look like this. She's not bug-like at all. She's like some kind of weird woman. This is what a woman looks like, by the way.
See.
After defeating her, Hornet binds Grandmother Silk to herself.
It is an
As
interesting
she
design.
does so, her crest expands immensely, and her masks transform into Weaver-style ones. Hornet's binding results in the entire Citadel getting covered in a thick web of silk. We then see Hornet's body curled up inside the cradle as she grows additional pairs of arms. This ending is referred to as Weaver Queen in the game's achievements menu. It seems this was the end goal of the Weavers. Much like Eva before her, Hornet was an attempt by the Weavers to create a being capable of usurping Grandmother Silk. The Weaver Queen ending is not a happy ending for Hornet, as it depicts her following the predestined path the Weavers wanted for her, with her body becoming even more Weaver-like in appearance. But we know that wasn't Hornet's true desire. At some point the caretaker asks this of Hornet, saying, "Ready to make your play, to oust one ruler and claim her place?" To which Hornet replies, "I'll not deny some part of me desires that outcome. Dominance, it seems, is baked deep in my blood, as too, no doubt, for the one up top. And yet, another part resists. A part, over time, I find myself siding with more. That part wishes not to claim a monarch's mantle. Rather it would see my freedom regained, and this kingdom's bugs unshackled from their pale chains." So if the Weaver Queen ending
This
is
kind
a
of nice
bad
that the
ending for Hornet,
main character's
are there any
motivations
good
are actually
ones?
spelled out
Well,
in this
let's
game.
look at the Twisted Child ending. To get this ending, Hornet has to bring the Twisted
not
Blood
able to
item
get
to
this.
Greyroot, a strange creature located in Shellwood.
I
Doing
tried.
this lets Hornet access
but-
the Rite of Rebirth quest, where Greyroot injects Hornet with a parasite that limits her silk and removes
Could
her
not do the
ability
fight
to
without
equip tools.
healing.
To remove the parasite, Hornet must seek help from Yarnaby in Greymoor, a doctor kicked out of Belhart for her questionable medical practices. But Hornet can actually just keep adventuring around Farloom instead of dealing with the parasite immediately. This can lead to some interesting interactions. Eva will bar Hornet from entering her chamber.
Interesting.
Any Wardenfly that catches Hornet in a cage will be killed by the parasite.
Oh.
Tip and Pill will refuse to let Hornet make deliveries. But the biggest change comes from when Hornet defeats Grandmother Silk while still infected. Both pale beings will get tangled in the parasite's roots and be turned into some kind of hardened plant material. Then this happens. So I don't think that's a particularly good ending either.
No.
But the bad endings don't stop there. There's actually another ending that was cut from the game called Strung to Serve. From what information
Okay.
I've seen, this ending was originally going to trigger if Hornet hadn't rung enough of the Bell Shrine bells across Farloom.
Hmm.
There's a cut line from Caretaker implying these bells weaken Grandmother Silk. In the final game, these bells just unlock one of the two paths to the Citadel, so they aren't quite as important as they might have been earlier in the game's development. In this ending, Grandmother Silk overpowers Hornet at the end of the battle. We get a shot of what appears to be some kind of fusion between the two beings. This being then sends threads down to the hapless pilgrims below. So in this ending, it seems like Grandmother Silk succeeded in taking Hornet's strength, and is now
That does
free to
kinda
enslave
suck.
all of Farloom to her will. So that's a
They
really,
animated the whole
really
ending
bad
and then
ending.
just weren't able
But
to use
don't
it.
worry, I'm sure the next ending will be good, right? Well, no, it's not a good ending. It's honestly not even really an ending. If Hornet helps enough people in Farloom, the Caretaker will eventually suggest to her a method to trap Grandmother Silk. This involves collecting the souls of the Caretaker's remaining relatives left in Farloom. These souls include the Chapel Maid in the Moss Grotto, the Bell Hermit underneath Bellheart, and a deceased bug whose soul can be found in Bile Water. Both the Chapel Maid and the Bell Hermit give their souls willingly, but the remaining soul, the Seeker's soul, is a little more difficult to obtain. At some point, this bug traveled into Bile Water to seek the help of the Stillkin. But instead of working with this bug to fight against the Citadel, the Stillkin killed him and took his soul. Hornet has to
Yeah, the
infiltrate the
Stillkin kinda
Stillkin's
suck.
home, Bilehaven, and defeat them and their leader, Grohl the Great. Now, I have the feeling people are going to try and make the Stillkin out to be the bad guys here. But I'll be honest, if the Seeker was anything like the Caretaker or the Bell Hermit, I don't blame the Stillkin for doing what they did. I will stand with Grohl the Great here, and I hope you do too.
I
The
don't
Caretaker
know.
also instructs Hornet to
I don't
search
trust him.
Weaveness Atla for the Weaver's prototype weapon, the Snare Setter. Hornet gives these three souls and the Snare Setter to the Caretaker, who then sets up the trap inside the cradle. Hornet then challenges Grandmother Silk. After defeating her, instead of binding, Hornet plays her needle in to activate the Caretaker's trap. But something unexpected happens. A large circle of void within the Snare Setter appears beneath Hornet and Grandmother Silk. The art assets for this thing imply that it's actually opening a portal directly to the Abyss.
Makes
The void
sense.
starts to pull Grandmother Silk in, who in turn grabs onto Hornet, attempting to drag her down as well. But this scheme is thwarted by Lace, who cuts Hornet free and falls into the void with her mother. The two disappear into a giant black ball of void that then collapses in on itself, creating a shockwave that shakes the entire Citadel. But just as things seem to have finally ended, void-covered silk threads reach up through the ground from below. This concludes the snared silk ending. But instead of putting Hornet back to before the fight in the save file, this ending triggers Silksong's third act, called Abyss. Hornet awakens to find that all of Farloom has been altered, with environments wrecked by the appearance of black threads, NPCs killed in the quakes,
Yeah.
and enemies possessed by void. Hornet travels back to the ruined chapel where she confronts the Caretaker, the Chapel Maid, and the Bell Hermit, who we learn at this point are actually snail shamans.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out their fascination with the void led them to try and use it in combination with the Snare Setter to trap Grandmother Silk in the Abyss. The only problem is Lace also fell into the trap. This has caused Grandmother Silk to violently resist against the void, continuously creating more silk to keep the Abyss from consuming her daughter. And at the same time,
I see. That's what
void-infused
happened.
threads connected to her cocoon have shot up into Farloom, threatening to destroy the entire kingdom. Hornet resolves to travel to the Abyss to investigate. She heads to the deep docks to seek the help of Ballo in using the old diving bell to drop down into the Abyss. Ballo obliges, but the age of the bell causes a malfunction, leaving Hornet stranded deep below Farloom. Hornet looks for Grandmother Silk, but discovers that she has been submerged within the Sea of Void. Lace, never one to waste an opportunity to mock Hornet, somehow astral projects herself into the room.
Yeah, it
and
is
tells
interesting
Hornet
how
there's
she's able to
nothing she
just
can
do
to
that.
save Farloom. Lace explains that she saved Hornet as an act of rebellion against her mother for creating her so frail, and seems to relish in the idea of dooming her mother and all of Farloom along with her. But Hornet remains determined, claiming that she will acquire the bloom that repels the dark. Hornet returns to the top of the Abyss, only to find that the diving bell has disappeared. So she has to climb back out of the Abyss
this was
herself. It's
hell.
at this point that the music from the 2019 reveal trailer starts playing for the first and only time during the entire game. Now, I've watched that trailer probably over 300 times in the last 6 years, and it was honestly kind of weird not hearing all the sound effects from the trailer. Hopefully Team Cherry will patch the game to add them back in. I really think that would make this moment even more epic. Hornet returns to the Snail Shamans and explains that she must retrieve an Everbloom from within her own memories. We see what is likely the exact same type of flower in Hollow Knight, going by the name Delicate Flower. Grey Mourner, one of the Pale King's 5 great knights, brought the delicate flower from a faraway land, and requests that the knight take the flower to the grave of her dead lover, the Traitor Lord's daughter. I don't know what it is with Team Cherry and tragic dead gay lovers, but if you are gay or have a gay lover, and Team Cherry wants to put you in their game, maybe stop and think about it first.
I see.
If the knight tries to give the delicate flower to the
Do we
white
have to
lady,
question that?
she declines, explaining that the flower contains a rare power. She also tells Hornet in the Red Memory that the Everbloom is the first light. The knight can give the flower to the Godseeker, but while she recognizes it as rare and pure, she can't detect any godliness from it. However, giving the delicate flower to Godseeker actually unlocks an alternate ending for Hollow Knight. The Godseekers in Hollow Knight are attempting to attune to the Radiants, who they detect as the highest god in all the land. When the knight first arrives in Godhome, a dream realm inside the mind of the Godseeker, she is not impressed, calling it a cringer. But if the knight continues to clear the pantheons, defeating boss after boss, the Godseeker begins to take notice of the knight. Upon defeating the Absolute Radiance at the end of the Pantheon of Hallownest, the knight seems to take on a new form, referred to in-game as Void-Given Focus. After this transformation, the knight begins to leak out from the Godseeker, with void tendrils lashing out from her body. However, if the Godseeker is holding the delicate flower, Godseeker and the void leaking from her disappear, leaving only the flower with a single stained petal. So it does indeed seem like the Everbloom can repel void. Whether or not this event in Hollow Knight is the memory Hornet has of the Everbloom is unclear though. The White Lady calling the Everbloom
That would mean that was the
first
canon
light
ending of First Game,
implies
which would be
this
weird.
flower might be a primordial force in the world of Hollow Knight. It's described as having a pale light, maybe indicating that the power found within all pale beings is connected to it. But for whatever reason, only these flowers can repel void. Due to her nature as a weaver, Hornet can access things like the Everbloom from her memories using silk. So I guess it kind of works like Essence in Hollow Knight, but instead it's silk. Because what can't silk do in this universe? They can make freaking laser beams out of silk, for God's sake. However,
that gun.
Hornet needs a spell from the Snail Shamans to actually access the Everbloom. The Snail Shamans tell her they can cast the spell, but it will require a tremendous amount of power. They tell Hornet to seek the Old Hearts, the strength remaining from the former rulers of Farloom, Crust King Khan, Scarsinger Carmelita, and Nihilith. The Shamans then teach Hornet a new song on her Needlin, Elegy of the Deep, which will allow her to access the memories of these bugs from when they were in their prime, so basically like traveling to a pocket dimension. This is similar to the film Shrek Forever After.
I see.
Hornet finds the Old Hearts scattered all across Farloom. In the wind-blasted sands of Karak, she can find the corpse of Crust King Khan, hidden away in the Coral Tower. He's even got all his soldiers with him, aura farming even in death. Makes you think. In Upper Shellwood, she finds a shrine built begrudgingly by the Citadel in honor of Nihilith. The shrine itself is protected by Shrine Guardian Seth, who stops any bug who would try to approach it, killing them if necessary. It's not clear where Seth came from, or why he's even in service to Nihilith, but it seems like he's under some kind of spell, considering his personality completely changes after Hornet defeats him, revealing himself to be a total gamer. Finally, a Hollow Knight character I can relate to.
Wow.
Well, him and Styx. On the east end of Farfield,
fair enough.
Hornet can find
We
the
all
withered
relate to
frame of
Styx.
Scar Singer Carmelita, who's gotten a little bit bigger since she was young.
Yeah.
I've heard this is what protein powder does to you. Playing her newly learned song will allow Hornet to battle Khan, Nihilith, and Carmelita in their prime, and claim their hearts for the Snail Shaman's ritual. Hornet can also, completely unprompted mind you, track down the Green Prince on the border of Verdania and murder him while he mourns the loss of his lover. Hornet will then call him vain in her murder journal. What the fuck, Hornet? This means Hornet can actually acquire 4 Old Hearts, whichever one she doesn't give to the Snail Shamans.
That's completely
will get
optional,
put on
too.
a shelf
That's
in
wonderful.
her bell home. What is her problem? Upon bringing the Old Hearts to the Snail Shamans,
Love that.
the trio cast their spell, sending Hornet into the Red Memory, a dream space flashing back to moments of her past. We see the Weavers influencing Hornet from a young age, encouraging her to embrace her Weaver heritage. We then see Hera telling Hornet to forge her own path in life, and that she is not bound to follow the desires of her Weaver kin. Good mom. We then see Hornet training with
Hera's
Hive
cool.
Queen Vespa, the ruler of the Hive, a location hidden away in the far reaches of Hallownest.
Did she
The
just
idea
get
that
bigger?
Hornet was trained by Vespa was mentioned by Ari Gibson all the way back in 2017, but he implied the relationship might not have applied anymore. But 8 years later, Team Cherry has finally confirmed it. Now,
It does
you
explain
might
the
think that
name. I
this
think that's why they
interaction
gotta make the
finally
connection.
explains why Hornet's name is Hornet, but the game technically doesn't
Weird name
indicate
for a
that
spider,
anywhere in
otherwise.
Vespa's dialogue. For all we know, Hera just named her that. At the end of the Red Memory, Hornet confronts the White Lady, who defends her actions regarding the creation of the vessels. In case you forgot this minor plot point from Hollow Knight, the Pale King and the White Lady created the vessels by dropping their children into the abyss and allowing the void to hollow them out. One vessel was chosen to contain the Radiance, a vengeful moth god who has infected the kingdom of Hallownest with a sickness that preys on the minds and dreams of its citizens. Not only does this plan fail, as the Hollow Knight wasn't pure enough to contain the Radiance, but countless more vessels, including the player character from the game, were abandoned in the abyss. Hollow Knight's story is about the player character, the Knight, coming to terms with its past and deciding the fate of Hallownest on its own terms. So, all things considered, not the best showing by these two higher beings. And Hornet
Yeah.
even calls the White Lady out here, saying she would never resort to such a weak scheme for salvation. The White Lady responds with pity, and finally offers Hornet the Everbloom. I think this sequence serves as Hornet rejecting the excuses of her divine kin. It seems Hornet views their actions as coming from a position of weakness, while Hornet has come to find the strength to craft the world exactly as she dreams it. And through that strength, Hornet will choose to save another from the void, instead of sacrificing an entire generation of offspring to it. Hornet's resolve is reflected in the journal entry for Lost Lace, which reads, "To quell the mother's rage and see this kingdom saved, I will claim her back. This one the dark shall not take."
I guess you have
Hornet
to
awakens in the Snail Shaman's hut,
start the
but
game
all
back
three
up
of them are now
again
gone,
after
save
beating
for
her
their
to get that.
shells. They seem to have used all their energy when casting the spell, and faded away. Let's have a moment of silence for the Snail Shamans, who bravely gave their lives for Farloom.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of...
Anyways, here's my tier list for them. With the Everbloom in
Wow.
hand, Hornet
Wow.
returns to Deep Docks, where Ballo has fixed the diving bell. Hornet descends into the abyss again, where Lace stops her to chat one more time, saying, "Take the final plunge, Spider. Join us in my drowning palace, and let oblivion swallow us all." Hornet rebuffs Lace, saying, "Oblivion may take you, child. My own life I shall not sacrifice. I have survived the fury of your land. I have borne its barbs and its blades, and I have seen wonders behind its dangers. But always, child, I remain a daughter of Hallownest, and the void below all things, that darkness I will fear no longer." This is the last line of dialogue in the game before the true ending, and
That's
it's
pretty
also
cool
the only
dialogue,
time
too.
in the entire game the word Hallownest is spoken, which, considering Hollow Knight is 8 years old at this point, I think legally qualifies as nostalgia bait. You hate to see it. Hornet then
I mean,
begins
I
her
don't know.
descent into the lake of nothing below. Hornet arrives in a silken sphere created by Grandmother Silk. The Pale Monarch can be seen inside, bare of silk. Lace finally appears, but this time corrupted by Void, referred to in-game as Lost Lace. Hornet proceeds to
This
beat
damn
the
fight.
crap out of her, slowly
Aye.
freeing her body from the corrupting Void. Once Lace is finally cleansed by Hornet's blade, Hornet asks Grandmother Silk to give her enough silk so that she can escape the Sea of Void and return Lace to safety. However, as Hornet and Lace rocket through the Void, the petals of the Everbloom disintegrate. The ever-hungry Void tendrils take this opportunity to strike, but are stopped by none other than the Knight, who has arrived in Farloom with the rest of the Shades. We even briefly see the Knight's focused form, indicating that the Knight has likely been elevated in power by the ritual of Godhome in this timeline. We never
Okay.
really got a sense of the Knight's desires in the events of Hollow Knight, but I feel the Dream No More ending was about the Knight and its siblings destroying the Radiance, not because they wanted to save Hallownest or anything, but because they wanted to free the Hollow Knight from its suffering, trapped in the Black Egg, separated from its siblings. The Knight also choosing to help Hornet, another one of its siblings, implies that the Knight really does care for her. And it's not like Hornet also didn't help the Knight as well, guiding it towards the King's brand so it could learn the truth of its
Yeah.
conception. So the Knight helping Hornet here is another example of how Hornet helping others leads to the world of Hollow Knight being a better place, at least in some ways. The Knight returns Hornet and Lace to the surface, the void threads around them dissipate, the two awaken, and Lace has a bit of a laugh while Hornet hits her with the Weaver stare. This ending is called Sister of the Void. Farloom and its White Knight have been saved from complete destruction, and the system of endless song and toil has finally been eradicated.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we've talked about Silksong's story in detail, just one question remains. What is this game even about? Maybe it's a story about lineage, and how we shouldn't let our ancestors decide our fate.
Yeah.
Or it might be a biting criticism of how religion is a tool used by the powers that be to extract labor from the unwitting proletariat. It could be an examination on the nature of truth and how the web of lies we spin will inevitably ensnare us. Perhaps it's a story about the relationship between mothers and daughters, and how mutual love and respect should be shared between them, with no strings attached.
That could be part of it.
Or
what's
maybe
the joke,
spiders
though?
are just assholes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, but well, there we have it. That was a fun video. I feel like it was a bit less jokey than his Hollow Knight video, but a bit drier, but still very interesting. I think it did help clarify the lore a little bit. Though, I mean, even with this, I still say I think the lore and story of the first game appeals to me a bit more. But yeah, definitely interesting. Definitely a cool video. Yeah, I feel like I missed some things in that game, just in terms of like not finding NPCs and stuff. Or maybe I just forgot them. I really don't know at this point. I mean, that game took me like 4 months to beat, like just protracted over 41 streams. So I don't even know at this point. But I am glad to be done with it, and this video was a nice sort of way to cap it off, I guess. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed that. Mossbag makes some pretty cool content, and glad to be able to react to this video. Anyway, not really much else to add there. Hope you guys enjoyed the reaction.